The connector geometry is unique because it's the first geometry plugin that we actually need two other geometry plugins to use it with. So you can see that I drug a connector up here into our scene tree, and you see that nothing is happening within our scene editor. That's because we actually need two other containers to make this work. So in this case, we're going to use geometry, and we'll just drag a sphere up here, and we can use anything else. We can use a cube. Now I'm just going to separate these two. So I'm going to drag the cube to the left, the sphere to the right. And to be able to see this a little bit better, we just want to drag some materials onto either one of these objects so that we can really see what's going on here with the connector. So we'll make the sphere and the cube green, and then we'll just come in to our connector here. If you click on the connector icon, now when you are in the connector properties, you notice the use LOD again here on top. We don't have to worry about that at the moment. Below that, you see this little icon waiting for container 1. So we're going to come over into our scene tree and drag this sphere into our container. Now beneath that, we have a container 2. So I'm going to take my cube and drag my cube container onto this container 2. And when we do that, you can see that this little line forms between the two of these objects. This is our connector. And now what we just have to worry about is the center point of this connector. Before we do that, let's jump down to the bottom and increase the width of this connector so that we can see it a little bit better. So down here we have a line width, which I'm going to increase, and you can see as we increase it, it increases the width of this line. Below that we have a drawing mode, a line, and a mesh. If we change it to mesh, it will go a little bit thicker and respond more to your line width. At line, it only goes so far, and you're limited to the variable of 10. So to see this a little bit further, we can turn on the line color. So we can come in and just give this a color here within our color picker. And then further down below that, we have a border color. So we can actually give this a border if you want. And then you have a border thickness. So you can see as we increase this border thickness, that it adds a border around that line. Now jumping back up here to our container 1 and 2, and you can see that we have a connection point 1 by x-axis, a connection point 1 by y-axis, and a connection point 1 by z-axis. So really this is how we are connecting these two objects together. So for instance, under our connection point 1b x-axis, we have a couple of options. We have a min, a center, which it is set to by default, a max, a center BB, and an origin. So as we flip through these here, you'll be able to see the difference in how it lines up on each object. So center here on the X, it's lining up in the center on the X. We can use a max and or use the bounding box to guide it. So we change it to center BB. We can then use the bounding box within our scene editor to guide it. So if we go into the cube and you come into your axis center point here, you can see as we move our axis center point how it affects that connector. So if we jump back into the connector here, we can choose which way we basically want to connect our objects. So we can do this for the X and the Y, and if we come in and again choose different settings for each one of these, it will affect it differently depending which object you have it connected to. The sphere will be a little bit different from the cube, and so on. Now the one thing about this connector is that if you come in and move and or animate any one of your containers here, this connector is always going to follow it. So depending what type of object you have, where it is, what it's doing, all your connection points here may be a little bit different and how you want to set them up.